And then, of course, we came back. We drove back on Thursday, and we had the Skank Fest weekend, which was just, I mean, Skank Fest was incredible this year, man. It's always incredible, but it's like every year it gets taken to another level, and this year was it's just an unbelievable thing, man. It's really an unbelievable thing that, you know, we created with that podcast that Louis and Rebecca and Christine have brought to life with the festival and with the whole, you know, Gas Digital crew who like fucking were all, everybody was working, everybody was helping out, and it was just incredible. And there was a bunch of amazing comedians, some of the best comedians in the world who were there, and I would say, we'll go out on a limb and say, the best comedy audiences you could perform in front of. I mean, these guys were just fucking, they're like just hardcore comedy fans who really love like that real balls out edgy comedy that, you know, guys like me and you grew up loving. And it's just cool to be in that and be a part of that environment. And I had such a great time performing there. We did 2 live Legion of Skanks podcasts. We did a Kill Tony podcast, and then just like a whole bunch of fucking stand-up comedy shows. And it was great. Really, really great. I loved Dave Attell did his Unmasked with Ron Bennington. It was a really interesting long form interview with Dave Attell. You don't see him do those. Oh yeah. He really talked about his story. I mean, he's still Attell doing it, but it was really, really interesting to hear that whole thing.
Because usually he goes drinking. Let's talk about what's in the news.
Yeah, no, but he was telling his story. It was very, very interesting and hilarious. You know. And Gilbert Gottfried performed. A lot of great comedians there. It was a lot of fun. But the talk of the festival has been that Louie CK came and he did a stand-up set. So Louie did a stand-up set. It was the day before yesterday. So he did a show on Saturday. And we had some hints that this might happen. Basically, the morning of, we like you know, through some people we got, you know, it was known that that Louie was probably going to pop by, and I just felt like if he came by he was going to end up doing stand up. But you know, I wasn't sure, but I was pretty sure like if this guy comes by he was going to do it.
He's not coming just to hang out with us.
Yeah,
we're not that cool to Louie.
Well, it's not just that. It's not that he wouldn't come to hang out.
It's to see the scene.
It's that once he saw the scene, I felt like he would just have the itch to do it. And I gotta say, I've been doing stand-up comedy for about 12 years now, and I think watching that was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my comedy days. Like, the moment was just it was a really, really beautiful moment. And it's hard really to describe it. I don't know Louie, and we've had like very brief conversations. Like we've said a few words to each other. I don't know him, and I don't know what's going on in his head. But it felt like when he got there, he seemed uncomfortable and a little bit nervous about being where he was. And he even kind of touched on this in his act when he was talking about how he used to love New York and now he hates New York. Because there's just, you know, there's people everywhere. And you start to like get into this guy's head of what it must be like. Like if you really try to appreciate what it must be like to have a fall from grace like he had. And to have something that you built over 30 years just taken away. Like just that gone from you immediately. And then not only to have it taken away, but now go to this person who people fucking hate. Like, Louie's got to walk down the street. Any, like, chick who Louie sees on the street, or dude, I guess, for that matter, too, it must be in the back of his head, like, oh, does this person just fucking hate me? You know what I mean? Like, does this chick just and I felt like, and maybe this is just me speculating a little bit, but my wife, Lauren, also said she got the vibe. Like, she said she got the vibe, like, he, like, made eye contact with her at one point when they were in there, and she said she just got this vibe, like, his thing was like, oh, do you fucking hate me? Like, you know, for all he knows, it's like a female comic or something like that in the room. It's like, do you just like fucking, like, he seemed almost concerned about that. And even just seeing that kind of energy on him, it was this very strange thing. It's a very strange thing from my perspective, or like your perspective, to see this guy who's like a goat, You know what I mean? Like a guy who's one of the greatest comedians to ever live. This guy's selling out Madison Square Garden, multiple HBO specials. He was like a legit A-lister. Like not even in comedy, just in Hollywood. Like he was the guy. He was, if you had 2 years ago said, who are the biggest comedians in the world? Make a list. He's coming up very quick. Like I don't mean like a top 20 list, like a top 3 list. Like he's going to be on everyone's list. And to see him being uncomfortable and being kind of like, do people want me here? Is this weird? It was a very strange thing to see. And it's hard when you actually like see it to not kind of go like, for all this shit that people say. And I know we've talked about the Louie incident before, but just to kind of quickly recap it, like the idea that when you just think about what he had to go through and how disproportionate it is to anything he actually did. I mean, come on, man. Let's get fucking real. Louie did not commit any crimes. Louie did not force anyone to do anything. Louie did something that's a little bit weird and creepish. And, most guys, if they're being honest, have done a couple weird, creepish things in their life. Now, most of us haven't done specifically the Louie thing because that's just a bit weird. But, I look at it like this, right? Whatever. Maybe actually I'll just tell what happened first and then get into that more. But anyway, it was an amazing thing to me. I just looked at like this guy and it really like bothered me that I was like, wow, I can't believe like this sounds kind of queefy to say, but I can't believe we did that for the sake of art. It's terrible that we just ruined Louie. Like as a society, like it's terrible to take. There's only so many brilliant artists a society produces, and to take one in his prime who's worked. Look, Louie got everything Louie got for one reason and one reason only, and that's because he was that good at stand-up comedy. Louie was never the guy who was the most castable. No one ever put him up there because he was like had these like dreamy good looks. He wasn't like, oh, he's the leading man type or something like that. He just got so good at stand-up comedy that people were like, you know what? He's the guy. It's undeniable. He's the fucking guy. He's putting out a new special every year. That's excellent. He's the guy. And he worked his ass off for that. And to just fucking take that away. And there's something like it's so disturbing to me, like the idea that anything Louie did would get written up in the New York Times. I feel however you feel about asking ladies if they'll watch you jerk off. No one's consent was violated here. It's not. There's nothing newsworthy here that should merit the supposedly most important newspaper in the world, certainly in the country, like writing about this. And for everybody to know your personal details like that, it's just a mess. And I felt like when he decided he was going to go on stage and we were all hanging out like backstage on the show, and when he was going to go on, it was like I felt like, and I'm kind of speculating, I don't know what was going on in his head, but I kind of felt like he was a little like, we'll see how this goes. And you got to imagine from his point of view, he's only done like a few sets, and it seems like every time he does one, there's a huge backlash from it, and it's like this big thing, And there's all these people talking about how evil he is and how he shouldn't be let up and all that stuff. And he, from Louie's perspective, he doesn't really know what the fuck Skankfest is. This motherfucker was just doing arenas, and now all of a sudden he's popping into Skankfest, and this is like real. You get up to this like cushy standard of arena comedy, and now you're right back in the fucking, front lines of fucking Skankfest. Like you're in the trenches now, And first off, it's in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. So his first thought, I would have to imagine, when Louie's going to Greenpoint, Brooklyn, is like, is this going to be like a lefty, hipstery type crowd? Like, is that? Then he gets there and sees them, and pretty clearly that's not what we are. But I think from his perspective, dealing with a real raucous fucking, drunk kind of crowd like that, I think you might think, oh man, am I going to get like heckled? Am I going to get a bunch of like jerk off heckles? You know what I mean? And things like that. And he went out on stage and he got listen, I don't even know how to describe it. That video that's out there that's being played, it doesn't even do it justice. Everybody got a huge pop when they go out on Skankfest. Like, we all get huge pops. I get a big one. Jay and Lewis and all these guys, everybody. When Michael Che goes out, or Dan Soder, Ari Shaffir, everyone gets a huge pop. All these guys know us. Like, these are our people. But the fucking the fucking pop that Louie CK got when he walked out on a stage, and how fucking excited he got a standing fucking ovation. The room went fucking nuts. They broke out into a Louie chant for a full minute before he told his first joke. And then Louie went out and just laid down 20 minutes of just excellent, classic Louie CK comedy. And there was something about that moment where it was watching this, like, comedic genius. Like, if there's ever, I don't know if that term should ever be used. It's thrown around quite a bit, comedic genius. But if anyone is a comedic genius, it applies to Louie CK. If anybody is, he's one of the few people who actually deserves that title. And to watch this comedic genius who's like been fucking brought to such a low place, and kind of to see that our fans, like the Skanks fans, I think might have given him a boost of confidence that he really needed at this point in his life, to be like, hey, you know what? There are still a lot of people out there who fucking love you, who want to hear your comedy, who really appreciate, like, these are real comedy fans. They appreciate that. You can't take that away no matter what you do outside of it. Like, you know, Michael Jordan could go fucking murder 3 people tomorrow. He's still one of the greatest basketball players who's ever played. It's like, that's just the game. It is like, that's what it is. And Louie CK didn't murder anybody. So you don't have, you know, it's like, it was a great moment. And I really fucking, it like warmed my heart. It was like one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my comedy days. And then, of course, there was a huge backlash online about it, which I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure. And I know this has happened other places where he's gotten up, but and maybe I'm caught in the same situation, the Milo thing. Like, I kind of underestimated how much backlash there would be. But with the Louie thing, it's like, this is our own little world at Skank Fest. I didn't even think, like, who the fuck else is really paying attention to this? But, you know, it got tweeted out. I think Lewis tweeted it out, and then Rogan retweeted it. So then that got around to a lot of people. And then it got TMZ ran it. So TMZ ran Louie going up on Skank Fest. And then there's these fucking, you know, just like with having Milo on our podcast, then there's all these fucking comedians online, and all these fucking, I mean, I don't even know what words to use to fully describe the level of contempt that I have for some of these people. But they're like, you know, all tweeting about how horrible it is that they put Louie on. Of course, giving Rebecca more shit. Unfortunately, Rebecca, it's like, you know, I love Rebecca, but even with us leaving the creek, it's like your name's still attached to fucking, to Skank Fest, and they're still going to go after you because you're a weak target. To them, you're a weak target because you're somebody who does claim to have these, like, you know, we want a safe space for LGBT community values or whatever. So they'll still try to go after you. That's when you're dealing with these people, you're dealing with fucking bullies. So even if Rebecca's like, well, I'll give you like 80% of what you want, is that okay? They're like, no, give me that other 20, because that's how a bully responds. That's like if you like go, you know, like if someone's bullying you and asks for your lunch money and you go, well, I can give you these $2, but the other $1 is from medicine and I really need that $1 and I'm very scared of you right now, so please don't take the other $1. Like, what's the bully's response? It's like, no, give me that $1. Like, that's the whole point. You've admitted that you'll capitulate to them, so that's just the way it works. And it's disgusting. There's this one female fucking comedian. I don't know who the fuck she is, but she's been going back and forth with Lewis on Twitter, and she tweeted something about, like, she was like, this isn't a, you know, it's disgusting that they let Louie CK up. This isn't a censorship issue. This is an issue of women. Or she goes, this is an issue of me feeling safe when I go to work. And you're like, bitch, you weren't on the festival. Like, I am sorry. This is just this thing where they always say, like, it's not a censorship issue. It's just this other thing. It's not that we want to shut down someone's speech. It's just this other thing. It's like, this is so transparently bullshit. The idea, I mean, you were there, Brian, you were there. The idea that any female performer at Skank Fest felt threatened because Louie CK was there. First of all,
Can
now,
I comment that
yeah,
I was hanging out with a couple, I'm going to say between 25 and 30-year-old women, and that made their weekend.
Yeah.
So how dare you comment for other people? There are people with different perspectives than you. I was there, and there were some 25 to 30-year-old women who had made their weekend that Louie CK dropped by. I mean, I don't know what Skankfest budget is. I don't think he got, like, what his normal fee would be to play Madison Square Garden.
he sure didn't.
I think he stopped by, and our fans got a really special treat, which was fucking awesome. And guess what? Everyone that was there was really happy that it happened.
But it's always. But by the way, they don't even mean it. They don't even. This is the thing that's so annoying.
It's
to
just
me.
manipulative.
It's all manipulative.
Yeah.
Man. It's like when they talk about like. It's like all this PC shit. It's like they don't. I just don't buy it. Knows that Tim Dillon had that great tweet where he was like, for all the outrage mob people, how many of them have seen the inside of a soup kitchen, rather, in their life? Like how many of them? No, food kitchen they've probably seen, but how many of them have seen the inside of a soup kitchen their whole life? It's like you get to claim all these virtue points for being outraged and all this. Like, what do you actually do? Do you actually care this much? Like, I don't buy it. This is what I say. I don't buy it. I don't believe that you really care about transgender people. I don't believe that you really care about any of these issues. You just like using this for the power. Because you don't care. Here's another example of what they don't fucking care about. Like, right? That first off, the idea that what we really care about is that women feel like they're not protected. It's like, okay, well, first of all, none of the women who were there fucking felt threatened at all by Louie CK. Understand, right now is the best time to hang out around Louie CK. He's not going to ask you if he can jerk off in front of you again. Do you know what he's been through over that? Like, this is not the time he's going to do some weird shit. You could go ask Louie CK to jerk off in front of you. He's going to say no right now. I promise you. The last thing Louie CK is going to do as he's putting his toe back into the water of will you guys allow me back into comedy is go fucking do some creepy shit. So you are the safest you've ever been around here. The other thing is like, you know, to avoid the predator Louie CK, all you ever had to do was say the word no. And he didn't do it. So I'm sorry if women can't be called on to summon the courage to be like, no. No. And then he doesn't do it, which is like what happened when he asked women and they said no. I do say like, it's like I, as somebody who has, and I hate, even as I hear myself say this, I hate to say this because I used to hate when people said this, but it really does change your perspective. And I'll say, as somebody who has a wife and a daughter, I'm a little more sensitive to the claim we want to protect women from someone with predatory behavior. Like, hey, I get that. That's something that's important to me. I would certainly always want to protect my wife and daughter.
I guess getting jerked off in front of is a pretty light way to learn the lesson that you probably need to have better boundaries.
Well,
so in terms of the bad sexual experiences that you can have that start to make you think, hey, what personal, like, should I not be hanging out in hotel rooms late at night? Should I not be flirting with people that I don't have any, like those little lessons that you kind of learn? That's a light way to learn that. You know what I mean?
It's not the worst.
No.
It's certainly not the worst.
And that became a famous penis too. You got a good story out of it later.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of people who have just let fucking hobos jerk off in front of them. So the Louie CK jerk off story, you get written up in the New York Times. Now, look, I'd say if the stories of the girls who Louie CK, if they go back to a hotel with Louie CK and he goes, and now we don't know what the nuance of the conversation is. That's really where it would all depend on how creepy or how weird of a move it is.
Did he ask?
Yeah, well,
did he ask while pulling it out?
Did he ask after he was done? That's not really asking.
Yeah, did he spit on his hand beforehand and be really gross about it?
But look, that's what would tell you the nuance, what the conversation was, what the tone of the whole thing was. That's what would tell you how fucked up it was.
I mean, there's so many things that can make this okay.
Yes, there's a lot of moving parts here. But if you're saying going back to Louie's hotel and someone asks you, will you watch me jerk off? And you're saying that women can't say no because they're like in this weird position or the power dynamic or any of this shit. To me, the only logical conclusion from that would be like, well, then women really, they should, like, their place should be in the home and they shouldn't leave without a chaperone and they should never be allowed to like go back with a man to like on their own like that. Then those should be our cultural norms. Now, I don't really fucking believe that because I give women a little bit more credit than that. I think you're capable of fucking saying no and you can be an adult. Like, if you can't figure that situation out, you're just not ready for the world. I don't know what to say. The only one of Louie's, the only one of the stories with Louie that I actually heard and was like, oh yeah, that's real foul. You can't do that. Was the one that was at work. It was at like on the set of something. And I guess he went up to one of the chicks who works there and was like, hey, will you watch me jerk off? And she was like, no. And he was like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I have problems. And like left. And that's like the most awkward, weird, where you just went up to some chick. Now, let me just say, if somebody went up to my fucking wife at work Well, she was, I mean, she doesn't work now, but if she had a day job and she was a day job, I was just think like a comedian. But if she was at work and someone walked up to her and was like, hey, will you come watch me jerk off? And she was like, no, you fucking creep. And he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And she came home and told me that story. I'd be at her work the next day. Like, I would fucking settle this with this guy. But that should be settled basically with me punching a guy, and then it's over. And then you move on with your life. If fucking this guy had been publicly humiliated and then 2 years later he's trying to get a job and I show up like, don't let him work because he one time, it's like, okay, that would be insane. That would be an insane expectation of a disproportionate punishment. And on top of that, if I were to then refer to my wife as a victim of sexual abuse for the rest of her life, I'd be like, no. A guy was a creep to her. I fucking handled it. You know what I mean? Like it got handled in a thing, and then you're like, no, she's fine. She's a strong adult. She's capable of moving on with her life. And so it's just that part of it to me is like, look, I'm sorry to compare what Louie has gone through to what these girls have gone through. If it have a fucking like for all the talk of empathy from the left, have a tiny little bit of empathy for this guy who committed the crime of being into a weird thing, okay? For that crime, these girls, in a worst case scenario, these girls got proposed to watch someone jerk off and said no, or said yes and watched a guy jerk off. That's what happened to them. They saw a guy jerk off in front of them, or got creeped out and said no, okay? Louie lost tens of millions of dollars, had something he had been working on for 30 years destroyed. You know, I hear a lot of these people, like the ones who criticize Louie, and they'll make, you know, like this would be a very controversial argument to make. When Norm Macdonald said the thing about how he felt bad for Louie, they go, you feel bad for Louie? What about the girls? And even Norm Macdonald apologized, and he goes, no, I said the girls have never been through that, meaning they had never been through what Louie's been through. But what they've been through is far worse. And I was like, I'll say it right now, fuck what Norm Macdonald said. What Louie went through is way worse. It's way worse. I hear all these people on the left, they're like, oh, is it worse? I mean, he's still got millions of dollars. He's still wealthy. It's like, since when did social justice warriors think that money is all that matters in the world? It's like, yeah, he's got some fucking money. Let me tell you something. I've had years where I've never made millions of dollars, but I've made six figures, and I've had years where I made next to nothing. And it's nice. It's nicer to make money. But if you think money is like the end-all, be-all of happiness in life, I promise you it's not. It's not. How about the fact that you built something for 30 fucking years that was destroyed from you? How about being humiliated in front of the public, your friends, your family? The guy's got 2 fucking daughters, and and we all know shit about him that none of us should know. None of us should know about this. That's the truth. It was any of our fucking business. And so all that shit aside, it's like, if you don't think this guy's paid enough, I think you're truly sadistic. Like, truly sadistic to want him to suffer more for what he did. What happened to Louie was they decided to make an example out of him. It was right at the height of the Me Too thing. Right after Harvey Weinstein went down, they went, we want to take out this A-list big fucking name. We're going to write a big New York Times piece about it. And to keep this Me Too narrative going, they'll fucking just destroy him. And really try to never let him do anything. Like, can't do Skank Fest, can't pop into the Comedy Cellar. That's what these guys want. They want clubs banning him, shutting him down. So anyway, the thing I was saying before we go about feeling safe, you're like, this is just bullshit. You just want to shut this guy down. You don't care that it's like, you're not worried about protecting women. What you want is punitive. You want him punished more. And here's another one of the things they say that are just bullshit. And this is actually provable that it's bullshit. Is that how many times, and I know you heard this a bunch, how many people who were jumping on the train to criticize Louie said, well, you know, he didn't even address it comedically. Now, that was their big problem. Remember, they go, come on, man, you're not even going to go up there and address it and say how like say what you've learned from it. Like, we all wanted to hear Louie CK's comedic take on it. Well, guess what? He addressed it. He did a whole fucking chunk on it. He opened with it on the show. It was fucking perfect. It was hilarious. It wasn't coming from a place of like, fuck these bitches. It was coming from a place of like, I fucked up, and it was hilarious. He, in perfect Louie joke structure, mentioned it. How many of those people who criticized him for that are going, oh, okay, we're good then? None of them. They're all still pissed off that he did it because it was never about that. That was just one way for you to present your case without it seeming as ugly as it actually is, which is just that you want to shut down this fucking guy. It's like, I'm sorry to all these fucking comedians. The nerve of some of you people to think you should shut down a guy who accomplished more in a month in the peak of his career than you'll ever accomplish in your career. Like, fuck you. You don't get to decide what other people can do, man. This is what I was saying when we had Milo Yiannopoulos on our show. You don't get to decide who we can have on our podcast. Sorry, this is like a lesson that maybe a 3-year-old should know. By 4, you should have this down. Like that, genuinely that age. At 3, you'd be like, we still have to understand you can't control what other people do. By 4, it's like, hey, you're too old for this. You don't get to decide who we have on our podcast. You don't get to decide who we have on our comedy festival. You got it? Go make your own fucking festival. Go make your own podcast. That's what you get to do. Fucking nerve of some of these people, man.
I wish they did public polling on, because I think that we live in this land of fiction where they're trying to paint a picture like a lot of society cares about things that they just don't. Like this whole PC thing. It's in La La Land. Go interact with real individuals. No one gives a shit. Came to this Louie CK thing. My 83-year-old, very Jewish religious grandmother said, I don't get this. I don't get why people are so upset about this. Okay, that happened to some kids in their youth. Whatever. That's from a fucking religious Jewish lady who's outraged over sexual culture. She's like, grow up, kids. So I'm just telling you, mainstream society doesn't give a shit about this. This is like uncool people who just, you know what it is? It's almost like you're a bunch of kids are going to jump in a lake or something, and one kid's like, oh, you're not allowed to do that. It's the rules. You're not allowed to do that. And then the media comes along and goes like, pretends like that's the way everyone feels. They feel like that outsider who's against fun, when really that's not mainstream America. I don't think most people give a shit about this at all.
Well, that's and it's interesting.
Thought policing.
Like, it absolutely is. It's thought policing through bullying. You know,
but let's see the poll. You know what I mean? This is basically the court of public opinion. Fine. Where's the jury? You guys are probably 10% of the population in the United States that actually says guilty. So court of public opinion, 90% says fine.
But you also don't like, I mean, look, the truth is, right? Like, I believe in the democracy of the marketplace a lot more than I do in some in some
That's why I
poll.
should apologize.
So no, but I'm saying
like tour prove it.
Well, the problem is that this very loud minority will try to get him shut down and bring heat on every venue that books him
and
shame everyone. And they're so rabid that a lot of like venue owners will just be like, well, I don't know. I mean, I know they're only 1% of the population, but I'm gonna fucking deal with these guys for the rest of my fucking life if I have them. So I'm just gonna go over here and like don't get me wrong. Even when I said with the thing with Rebecca, I get why she did not like the idea of Milo being in her club. Look, it's gonna be a huge headache for her. Isn't it so much easier to just not do this and then go, you know, I get it. But with the Louie thing, it's like, you guys, I don't need any more democracy than seeing the reaction in the room that night. Those people, if you're going to argue with me that those people didn't want to see Louie CK, you're delusional. Those people were fucking thrilled. And that's all you,
and that's included all women
to do. Yes.
White women.
Yes, the important
the prime
ones.
women.
Yes,
they were there.
The prime women were all there.
They weren't bothered by it.
Oh no, and all the fucking female comedians. I mean, the female comedians were some of the most excited that he was fucking going up there. I mean, we were all fucking excited that he was there, but it's just the so reaction to it's been really nutty.
We all jerked off in front of each other to make him feel at home.
Yes,
he came into the green room. We're like, we're okay with it, Louie. Look, we're all jerking off here.
It really is a fucking weird. It's like a weird fucking dynamic, man, watching some of these people who like are trying to like grasp onto this thing because they just want to have something to be outraged about, something to be talking about, something, you know, I'm a leader against Louie CK. I saw one comedian who tweeted a thing like that Legion of Skanks was like the right-wing comedy festival. And it's just so funny that it's like, dude,
that's not
like
anyone's politics.
It's not political, man. It's not right or left. I mean, certainly the idea that it's right wing.
Find a single right wing comic at the
Well,
Nothing even
I mean,
close to that.
there might have been a couple. I mean, I think, Kumia did his show there, and like, I think,
that's one of
you could consider me
150 performers.
right
We're not
wing.
right-wing.
I don't really think so, but they would certainly consider us right wing. I think Rich Voss is a Republican, I believe, but but regardless of that, it's like to describe. Here's the problem you have, right? Like, if you have any meaningful definition of what right wing means, trying to make Legion of Skanks fans fit into that is a pretty tough fit. I mean, this is like a pretty degenerate group of people. This is right wing to you today? What, this is like, you thought there were a lot of people who were there like supporting like God, country, hierarchy, military. Like, is this what you think you're getting at
drinking
Skankfest?
and doing abortions in the parking lot.
Literally, I mean, it's like, really sorry. It's pretty tough to square that circle. That the Legion of Skanks crowd is some right wing crowd. I mean, to today's modern day social justice left, it's like, yes, anything that doesn't comply with their fucking political correctness is automatically right wing, but by any real definition of it, it's like, no, the truth is this: it's not left or right. It's a comedy festival. It's a different force entirely from politics. Take this as somebody who dabbles in both forces, both comedy and politics. They are different forces. They're different. One is searching for power or truth, and the other is searching for funny. It's different. They're different things. That's why listening to me rant on this podcast or listening to my stand-up comedy is different. It's not the same fucking thing. And there's a lot of just things like that will just kind of prove that wrong. Like the idea that Legion of Skanks is right-wing, it's like, okay, well, right, then why is there fucking so much degeneracy going on? Why is there drug use and all this other fucking shit? And also, why the fuck did Janine Garofalo get so much love? She was on the goddamn festival too. Nobody, see, the difference between what they consider like the left wing, which would be like, I don't know, Clusterfest or something like that, or like any one of these like kind of mainstream festivals, any LA like comedy festival where if you were to make a joke about transgender people, you would, bring the whole place to a fucking screeching halt and never work again. They could never open their arms for Nick DiPaolo to go perform there, or Owen Benjamin to go perform there, or me, or like anyone like that. Like, they could never do that. But at Skankfest, you can easily have Janine Garofalo perform, the fucking, those guys we fuck chicks were doing some shows there. There's like, there's no problem with any of that, because our guys aren't, like, one side is like authoritarian and the other side isn't. So one side is like, if you don't play by our rules, you're out. And our side is like, are you funny? They're just listening to your jokes. Like, if it's funny, it can come from whatever perspective, and then it'll hit a fucking laugh if it's funny. And if it's not, then, it probably won't get a laugh. But fucking I didn't see any of the other, the Guys We Fuck Girls sets, but I saw fucking Janine Garofalo's set, and she did great. And it's like, they fucking loved her. They were super like, they were like, oh, that's cool that she's here. So this is all, look, man, any fucking comedian who performed at Skankfest, you can't say that that wasn't just a fucking crowd of people who were fucking excited to fucking be there. They knew the comedians, they were real comedy fans, and they were really into the comedy. Dude, it was fucking impressive. Like, I'm fucking doing jokes at fucking, 11 p.m. on Saturday. These motherfuckers have been partying all weekend long, and they're listening to the jokes and like hitting punchline. Like, they're with it. And so I just, it was the perfect place for Louie to come fucking get up. And I'm grateful to him that he came and he blessed our festival. I don't care what these fucking maniacs say. He's still like the great Louie CK to me, comedically speaking. By the way, I had a fucking, I had a bunch of problems with Louie's politics. By the way, Louie's not right-wing. That's the fucking funny thing of all of this. Like, oh, Louie only goes and does comedy at the right-wing festival now. It's like, Louie fucking voted for Hillary Clinton. Louie wrote a whole thing about how Trump was Hitler and we were becoming Nazi Germany. I criticized it on this podcast. I thought his politics fucking suck. But his politics suck, but he's great as a comedian. You see? That's how that works. They're different forces. So he could do something, some dumbass thing like vote for Hillary Clinton, but he's still a fucking hilarious joke writer. And he had some great fucking new material. And I really hope he fucking gets back out there. He deserves the guy deserves to be able to do his fucking job. It's like it's just the right thing. Like, he's a great comedian. There's a lot of people who want to see him perform. He deserves to be able to go and fucking perform for those people. If you don't want to see him, perform, don't go watch him. You don't want to work with him, don't go work with him. I get you goddamn how many of these fucking chicks right now who fucking after the New York Times piece was written, after he gets brought down, are like, I wouldn't feel comfortable working for him. Let me tell you something. Even with all the rumors that were out there, back when he was when he was selling out the Garden, any of those bitches would have been happy to go work for Louie CK. They would have done it in a heartbeat. They would have fucking been thrilled to work with him. Anyway, that's the end of my Louie CK rant, and the end of my SKANKFEST rant. But SKANKFEST was a fucking great time. Props to Louis and Rebecca and Christine for all the work that they did, and everybody else who worked there. Did a great job.